Summon Sign dueling at Main Academy Gate proves for some interesting experiences to say the least. Not everyone is clear on the same rules, so I tend not to take it too seriously and just go with whatever the opponent does. In the end, if someone does something that truly feels unfair, there's always the severing finger. Just send them home and move on to the next match, no big deal. Some people will do the same after being severed and simply just replace their summon sign. Others will be so offended by it that they feel the need to message you. When I saw that first message notification pop up, I was literally thinking it was going to be something along the lines of, "My bad, I didn't mean to attack you right off spawn." But instead I just get the most hypocritical and ironic message I can think of. Of course, this is all just a video game, and I think that's something this guy forgets pretty frequently, judging by many of his future messages, which there are a lot of. This second message from him is just as confusing to me as it is to you, I'm sure. I'll go over the rest of the messages in chronological order, and show you the rest of the fights in order of the messages as well. I know there will be comments saying how I got baited by a troll, or wow, I can't believe you wasted your time replying to him, congrats for giving him the attention he wanted, etc. First of all, don't worry about how I spend my time. This is what I do. I make Elden Ring content, and this kind of thing is entertaining to me. I certainly enjoyed rematching him and poking holes in his logic, and if anyone happens to enjoy watching it, then it's all worth it in my mind. I'm not going to read the messages out loud, so please feel free to pause whenever you want to read them over. After that confusing second message of his, I just try to explain to him that I generally like matches to start with an emote rather than being attacked, and that I was literally just trying to bow. Then he starts going on about how I want some sort of special privilege, calls me kid, which is pretty funny, and tries to make the point that rules are dumb because everyone has their own. He calls me really dumb and tells me to keep making excuses, which is totally out of nowhere, and I'm not really sure what I have to excuse myself for at this point. His point on rules is true to some extent. Many players don't share the same perspectives on rules, so it's best not to take them too seriously. I go on to tell him my own extremely complex rule set, which is no red flasks and to start when both players are ready, which I think is pretty reasonable for anyone to wrap their head around, really. After that, I just send him the clip to see if he really still thinks I'm in the wrong, which he does, of course. He goes on to say how he starts to swing before I even hit the start button, which, yep, he sure does. He literally doesn't waste a single second before attacking an opponent with their back turned. A real white knight. Now, it's not like I don't find it annoying when I summon someone and they're AFK, and at some point it is totally fair to attack them. I usually wait 30 seconds to a minute, waving in their face, or maybe unequipping my weapon and punching them. And if they're still gone at that point, it starts to be a waste of your own time, so I think it's reasonable at that point to kill them or sever. But I mean, come on, at least give your opponent like 3 seconds to pause their movie or wipe their hands off and pick up the controller or something. That's just common courtesy. Then he talks about how I am strategically an idiot for standing that close. This is not a real life and death situation. I'm okay with taking the risk of picking up a summon sign without walking halfway across the map afterwards. Somehow he thinks I'm the one that's throwing a fit when I was planning on just completely ignoring and forgetting about him the moment that I severed. Kind of funny how he then calls my 2-sentence response a paragraph, when I do believe he's sent just as many or more words at this point. After that, I try to point out why there are in fact some rules in place that are a good idea to adhere to, or special privileges as he likes to call them. I mean, it would strategically be a good idea for me to pre-buff, and rune arc, and jump him right off the bat. He replies with something totally unrelated before completely missing the meaning of my sarcastic comment about being called a coward. After that, he just kinda repeats himself and continues to strawman the whole excuses thing. I try to explain to him that it's not that serious and that I don't really care if I'm putting my poor character's health at risk by standing too close. Then I ask him to duel, because, well, 1, I thought it would be a good chance to show him why players tend to allow each other a few privileges, and 2, I thought it would be funny. At this point he starts to backpedal a little bit and acts more friendly, which doesn't really surprise me, but I don't really give him any ground on that since he hasn't actually done anything that I'd consider redeeming. He's still called me stupid, dumb, an idiot, a coward, and just been very obnoxious in general, so I didn't feel an urge to be friendly. You can call that petty, but I'd also call it fair, honestly. Okay, so our first password fight and our second match ever. I was having a bunch of fun with this and decided to hide in the bushes at the opposite end of the arena. With some strategic genius being put to use, I managed to take the first fight. This is what he had to say after the match. I basically spend the rest of the messages and fights trying to poke fun at his logic. I seriously wouldn't have kept that up if he decided to give me an apology at any point. You know, like, my bad for calling you a stupid coward. I realize I was a little out of line for that now. But just acting friendly out of nowhere and pretending he wasn't incredibly antagonistic wasn't going to be enough for me. Alright, so with experiment number 1 of standing far away having been complete, I decided to stand right next to him again. How he reacted to this was a very telling moment to me. You saw how when he actually knew that I was paying attention, his first move was to roll away rather than attack. His next message made me laugh, basically just saying that beating him wasn't hard at all, so I heartily agreed with that. For experiment number 3, I decided to stand at what I'd call an average distance and just bow like how I would any match. And what does he decide to do? Run straight up to me and try to hit me out of my bow. You can't make this up. Experiment number 4. I'll use my physic flask and boiled crab this time and see if he has anything to say. Spoiler alert, he just stays quiet. Experiment number 5 was a bit of a failure. I was planning on using my crimson flasks just to get him to admit that at least some rules do need to be in place, but the fight just went so quick that I couldn't make use of them. This time I was committed to use the flasks, so I told him let's just do one last fight. This is probably one of the goofiest matches I've ever seen. I let him hit me a few times just so I can immediately heal it off, which he was seemingly fine with, before literally cowering at my feet and giving me the win. Okay, so I've finally done it, right? I finally got him to admit that some rules, such as no healing flasks, is a rule that should probably be in place. Let's see what he said. Lol GG. So I just questioned how that was a good game and remind him of some of the things he said, and then he sends me all this. He literally says that no one can agree on rules, but then finally breaks character and admits that he does think that no healing should be a rule, along with no buffing for whatever reason. That one was a little baffling. Maybe he meant no pre-buffing. Ultimately, he just showed that he does in fact think that players should allow each other certain privileges, which makes him come off totally hypocritical, and that all he was trying to do is defend himself the whole time. In this monologue, he says, and I quote, "I mean, at the end of the day, you got hit while trying to do an emote, so what?" This just completely goes back to a random strawman argument, since I literally had that exact attitude of so what when I severed. It was just him feeling the need to call me a coward that made him worth a bit of cheeky BM to me. These next few messages from me is kind of my closing argument. It basically sums up what exactly started this whole exchange, and it sure wasn't him simply attacking me. I also point out that there are indeed resources for learning about proper sportsmanship in PvP, and if you refuse to do any research or listen to any advice, at that point you're just being ignorant. That video I linked him is from Fighting Cowboy, which I'll also link in the description for anyone interested. For casual matches at Main Academy Gate, there really isn't too much to worry about. Like I said in the messages, the only two rules that I really care about are 1, no crimson tears, and 2, start when both players are ready. I know I say in the DMs that matches should start with an emote, but ultimately that doesn't even matter to me. Any sort of indication that both players are ready is fine, whether that's spamming L1, crouching up and down, even just walking around for a few seconds, that's kind of all it takes. Swinging at someone immobile with their back turned literally just goes against the entire point of dueling. You can sneak up on Godric soldiers and backstab them if that's what's fun, but the whole point of PvP is self-explanatory: player versus player. In the end though, the lesson here isn't how to behave in PvP, it's about talking down to people and how dumb it can make you look. He literally says that he uses the severing finger on laggy opponents, and even knowing that that could have been the reason that I severed him, he still opens up with the word coward. All I can say really is to give your opponents the benefit of the doubt whenever possible. It's not the best practice to be super picky about rules for pub matches, but if you are looking for a specifically curated PvP rule set to follow, I'll recommend joining the Elden Ring PvP Discord. There's tons of PvP resources, thousands of players to chat with, and a ranked ladder for every platform that takes these unspoken rules and makes them official. I'll throw a link to that in the description as well, and if you do join, shoot me a challenge on the Xbox ladder and I just might accept. Alright, going back to the messages for a moment, we have the very last two that were ever sent, and this was honestly my sort of test to see whether or not I was even going to make a video on this. If he decided that he finally wanted to be apologetic, then I was seriously going to forgive and forget, but he just reinforces the whole coward thing. He concedes that I did, quote, kick his teeth in, but I don't really care about that. Beating him was never so much the point as simply just getting him to admit that some rules are good, which I guess was sort of a success. I do hope you guys found this entertaining. In the end, that's the true goal, so if you did, let me know in the comments. I do read them all. Of course, if you did enjoy the video, I would greatly appreciate you subscribing. 100k subs is the dream, and I'd love to have you as part of it. Until next time.